Hey, this is Bill Moseley, Otis Driftwood, and Chop Top Sawyer, and you're listening to Without Your Head.
You were a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. How did you get into Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2? Did you just go to like a reading for it?
No, I didn't. Actually, in my 10-year effort to try to get that spike out of my brain, that spike of terror. I actually was, one summer, I was living in New York City for many years, and one summer, just to get out of town and to get healthy, I went out to work on a ranch in Wyoming, up near Green River, Wyoming. And anyway, I was working on this ranch, the Box R Ranch, and I was just a grunt, basically digging holes and baling hay and doing all that stuff. And I was working with a kid who probably wasn't much more than 16 years old, who was a sugar freak. I had never encountered a real sugar freak like that. I mean, that's somebody who, drank bug juice for breakfast and frosted flakes, and then had some fudgesicles and some pie. It was just constantly banging the sugar. And what would happen is when we would do manual labor under the Wyoming sun, he would start to sweat and shake and go into what I called sugar deliriums.
Wow.
And so he would start kind of, I guess it's the American equivalent of speaking in tongues, but what he would do is he would start singing snippets of top 40 songs, and he would do cartoon voices and advertisement jingles. He would just all this stuff would be coming out of his mouth. It was pretty outrageous. But, I had worked with him enough and, gotten used to it. So I would pretty much turn a deaf ear to him.
Sounds very entertaining.
One day we were working, and all of a sudden he's going, Captain Crunch, and doing this crazy stuff. And all of a sudden he goes, Texas Chainsaw Manicure, and then just continues to blather away. But I heard that, and I'm digging a hole in the dirt, and all of a sudden I hear that, and I just go, whoa. And so I went back to the bunkhouse, good standard cowboy lodging, and I got out my notebook and I wrote down the Texas Chainsaw Manicure, and I just had a vision of a woman going to a beauty parlor, going in, getting her hair done, sitting under the dryer, and being asked by the beautician, anything else? I think I'll have a manicure. And, calling for a manicure, and I had a vision of the sliding steel door, which was so scary about the original chainsaw, and Leatherface coming out with a smoking saw, heading toward this woman under the dryer to, give her a manicure. And so I kind of sketched out this, it was like a 5-minute short film, I guess, and I went back to New York when my stint on the ranch was over, and gathered some friends. And we ended up renting a place called Sonia's Hair Fashions out on Staten Island, and got about $1,000, just got some different things. Got a bouncer from a popular nightclub, a huge power lifter guy who's going to be our Leatherface, and somebody made a mask, and somebody found a chainsaw. It was kind of like, hey, I've got this, you've got that, and we all got together in 1984, and we made the Texas Chainsaw Manicure. And I ended up, so the woman, in fact, the woman goes in, she gets her hair done, she sits under a dryer, she wants her manicure. Leatherface comes out with a smoking saw. The woman is screaming. He's like sawing her fingers. It looks like you just imagine she's just got nothing but stumps. And she passes out from fear. And the hairdresser kind of slaps her face, brings her to, and she's like, oh no, oh. And she looks down. She's got like a perfect manicure. And so that's kind of the gag. And then she walks out of the beauty parlor to her husband, presumably, who's waiting for her in a pickup truck. And she goes, look, honey, I got the best manicure ever. And then we cut to, there I am behind the wheel of the truck. I'm her husband. And I am dressed and made up to look exactly like the hitchhiker. And I go, hey, that's great, honey. We should celebrate with some head cheese. And I had actually gone out and bought like some head cheese, which is, frankly, not really a dramatic piece of meat. But, what's dramatic about head cheese is, knowing what goes into the making of head cheese. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I had this like nondescript hunk of head cheese. And actually in one take, I even licked it, which was really a bad idea. And anyway, so there was the Texas Chainsaw Manicure. I had gone out of pocket. I had actually gone into debt to make it. And I was living in New York at the time, and I tried to sell it to Saturday Night Live. There was a comedy show on ABC called Fridays, which was the Saturday Night Live competition. Nobody seemed to want it for one reason or another. No Saturday Night Live stars, too long, done videotape, not film, all these different things. So basically what that meant was that I, basically went to work as a waiter, to try to make the money to pay back Broadway Video. That was, Lauren Michaels' production company. And they're the ones that had, had been very excited about editing, letting me edit the manicure there. And they were, they got less excited as the process went on. And finally, they would call me like every morning at 8:00, to gun me for the, $800 I owed them or whatever. And so I was basically stuck with the manicure. I was, waiting tables, trying to give a little bit to Broadway Video to pay off my debt to them. And I was also, what I did before I was a professional actor was I wrote for magazines. And one of my regular employers was a magazine called Omni, which was a science fiction magazine, nice glossy mag back in the 80s. And they, I would do arts columns for them. And so they called me up and said that MGM wanted me to, they were going to fly me out on a junket to cover the making of 2010, the Space Odyssey sequel. Mm-hmm. So that was cool. So I went out to Los Angeles and, they put me up and everything. And I had a buddy from high school who was working in Hollywood. He was already, he and his writing partner had written Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, wow.
And so they were already like a hit writing duo. And so I went to dinner with my buddy. His name was Peter Seaman, actually Peter S. Seaman, yeah, believe it or not, and his wife. And I brought along a VHS copy of The Manicure. I know this is a long story, but
no, it's good.
Okay, so I had dinner with them at their house in the Valley, and then I said, "Hey, I got something to show you," and I put on the Chainsaw Manicure. And I ended up, they loved it. And my buddy Pete Seaman said, "Look, dude, my writing partner, and I have an office right across the hall from Tobe Hooper." Huh. And, for your listeners, he, that's the writer-director of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Mm-hmm. And so I said, "Well, geez." And my buddy said, "Look, if you let me have a copy of The Manicure, I'll walk it across the hall to him." So I said, "Sure, absolutely." So, he took the Manicure and he did what he said he was going to do. He took it to Tobe, and apparently Tobe watched The Manicure, all 5 minutes of it, and got so excited about it that he called in his producing partner. I guess Tobe was working on Poltergeist, and his producing partner was Steven Spielberg. And Steven came in and watched The Manicure and also loved it. And they especially loved, as it turned out, my portrayal of the hitchhiker. And not only did my buddy walk The Manicure into Tobe Hooper, but he also got Toby's home number from Toby's secretary or something. And he told me to give Tobe a call in about a week or something. So I did my job on the set of 2010, and I flew back to New York, and I called Tobe Hooper. And miracle, I found out that he hardly ever answers his phone. So when I called him, he actually answered the phone. I didn't know that till later, but he answered the phone, and I identified myself. I said, "Hi, Tobe. I'm Bill Moseley. I'm the guy that did the Texas Chainsaw Manicure." And he went, "Oh, hey, Bill. Yeah, I love the manicure." And I said, "Well, great. I'm glad to hear it." And he said, "Yeah, who was the person that did who played the hitchhiker in that?" I said, "Well, actually, that was me." And he goes, "Well," he said, "that was great, man." He said, "Look, man, if I ever do a sequel, I'll keep you in mind." And I went, "Whoa, that's awesome." He said, yeah, stay in touch." So I remember, I think I sent him a postcard, and then never heard from him for the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. So I figured that was that was certainly a cold trail, but it was it was exciting. Mm-hmm. It felt, even though I was basically still in debt for the manicure, that it was nice to have the man say nice things about it. Yeah. So and then it was like some cold dark night in early 1986, and the phone rang, and I could tell back then we didn't have, this was pre-cell phone, that you could kind of hear basically if it was long distance or not, and there was a kind of a sizzle to the call. And so it was this guy saying his name was Kit Carson. And I think I had read maybe on page 6 in the New York Post, like some gossip stuff about Kit was like the hotshot writer, husband of Karen Black, and they had like a kid. And, so there was some kind of, I'd heard the name before. And he told me that he wanted to get my address and send me a copy of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 script. And I said, "Geez, all right." So I gave him my address. I mean, I figured, geez, maybe it really is this guy. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, a week later, the script arrived. And he had told me to read it and, pay attention to the character of Chop Top. Excuse me. So I did, and read it, and I thought it was a funny script. And I thought Chop Top's like a big part. I was surprised. And so I called him back, and I said, I love the script. It's really funny, and I love Chop Top. And he goes, "Oh, I'm glad to hear that. We'll be in touch." And, I'm thinking, like, I hung up, and I'm thinking, well, hey, maybe they'll fly me out to L.A. Maybe I'll get a free plane ticket back to L.A., and, if I have to audition or anything, I'm not going to get the part. I'm not really a professional actor kind of thing. I could act, but I wasn't like, trying to make a living at it. And instead, about a couple of days after that, I get a call from the Canon Films legal department asking where it said, do I want to negotiate the contract or do I have an agent?
Wow.
And I'm just like going, what the hell is going on here? This is completely surreal. And I had met an agent at a Christmas party, an agent from William Morris. So I called her up and said, "Would you negotiate a contract for me?" And of course, she said, "Sure, it's free money." So she called him up, and she called me back and said, "Well, I got some good news and some bad news." And I said, "Well, what's the good news?" She goes, "Well, you got the part. I mean, I guess it's real. You got the part." I was like, "Wow, that's amazing." And she said, I said, "What's the bad news?" And she said, "Well, they're only going to pay you scale." And at the time, as a writer in New York, a freelance writer, I was probably averaging $250 or $300 a week. The only thing that kept me in town was I had a cheap apartment. And I said, "Well, scale, geez, that doesn't sound good. How much is that?" She said, "I think it's like about $1,600 a week." Like, well, that's pretty good. Nothing wrong with that. And then she said, the reason, she said, plus they want you to shave your head. And I went, "Yeah, okay, yeah." Mm-hmm. And that's when she, said, "Yeah, so I got you $5,000. I'm going like, dude.
Thank you.
I was redeeming bottles and cans back then. $5,000 to shave my head? Shit, when do I start?
This is Bill Johnson, and you're listening to withoutyourhead.com. Feed your head.